Hi, welcome to Cinepope, and in this video, I will talk about the movie Devil's Pass. Holly, a psychology student from the University of Oregon, plans to make a documentary about a mysterious incident with her cameraman friend Jensen. The official version said that the 9 mountaineers from the Diet Love group died of pneumonia, but Holly and her cameraman didn't think that was the truth. The fate of the young people lies on a snowy mountain known as the Mountain of the Dead, named so by the local indigenous tribe due to a series of strange thefts and disappearances that have occurred there throughout history. Holly and the cameraman are accompanied by 2 experienced mountaineers, Andy and JP, as well as an audio engineer named Denise. All 5 members are colleague students. Before embarking on the trip, the team trains on local ski slopes. After months of extensive training and study, they finally set off for Russia. The scene suddenly cuts and we see a news report about 5 missing Oregon students, with search still ongoing to find them. Well, these students are our protagonists, which means something terrible happened to them on the mountain. We just don't know what yet. We see several people being interviewed in the report, including residents of the indigenous tribe. They believe that the disappearance of the young people happened in a place where 2 worlds intersect, creating a channel that allows passage from our world to the spiritual world. Russian authorities recovered footage taken by the Oregon students. Such recordings were confidential, but were leaked on the internet. One of them we see Holly, the group's leader, terrified, and the cameraman trying to calm her down. The scene cuts, and then we go back a month to find what happened to the protagonists. The 5 students arrived in Russia and traveled by train to the small town near the destination. We see footage where Andy and JP say they didn't bring tools or sophisticated devices because they are confident they can manage with simple compasses and GPS. In that place, they try to interview a local resident, who is the 10th member of the Diet Love group, who never went on the expedition because he fell ill at the last minute. After the tragedy that happened to his friends, the man had a mental breakdown and has been in the city's psychiatric hospital ever since. When the students approach the institution, 3 nurses come out angrily, and they order them to stop filming and leave. Confused, Holly asks why they can't interview the 10th member of the Diet Love group, but the nurse states that he's no longer alive and aggressively insists that they go away. Moments later, the student notices a crazy old man at the window, holding a sign with something written in Russian. Since the students don't speak Russian, they can't understand what the man says. Later, they all go to a bar. There, a truck driver offers them a ride to the mountain. The young people accept. On the way, they stop to visit the truck driver's aunt, who was part of the team that rescued the deceased mountaineers. Before entering the house, Holly shows the driver the sentence that the crazy man at the window wrote to them. The truck driver says it means, "Stay away," but a group of students doesn't pay much attention to it. Later, they decide to record some footage with the former member of the rescue team to ask what she saw. The lady tells the whole story of how they discover the bodies of the deceased, but she informs them that in fact 11 bodies were found, not 9, as the news had reported. Furthermore, they found some kind of machine that the authorities decide to hide from the public. Later, the team resumes their journey and the truck driver drops them off at the mountain trail. As they walk along the trail, the young people discuss various hypotheses of what might have happened. Did they encounter aliens, they sarcastically wonder. Sometime later, they arrive at the infamous Mountain of the Dead. As the weather is changing rapidly and getting colder, they decide to camp and continue the journey the next morning. Later that night, Holly approaches the cameraman who is admiring the sky of that desolate landscape. He tells her that a week before the Diet Love tragedy, some people spotted an orange glow in the sky. The residents thought they were aliens, while the government explained it was just unusual weather conditions. The next morning, our heroes discover strange footprints around the campsite. These footprints are larger than human. But the most bizarre aspect is that they are footprints of someone who was barefoot. However, if someone was barefoot in this temperature, their feet would freeze in just 10 minutes. The cameraman jokes that they are Yeti footprints, but Holly observes that the tracks appear in some areas and then suddenly disappear, as if they had flown away or something. Nevertheless, Andy and JP suspect that Holly is playing a prank on them, making the footprints at night while they slept. They continue the journey until they hear a strange noise and find more footprints like the previous ones. Everyone is terrified, and to make things worse, they find an abandoned weather station, inside of which was a severed human tongue. Shocked, they decide to stop for a while. The cameraman tells Holly about some mountains in China that produce a low-frequency sound that drive humans and animals insane. He says he heard this sound as a child, lost in the forest, and now he feels like he's experiencing that over again. Holly shares with her friend the dreams she has had all her life, in which these mountains and a door leading only to darkness appeared. For her, destiny brought them to that place to unravel the mystery together. Shortly after, they continue walking and finally reach Dyatlov Pass, the place where the 9 mountaineers died. They decide to stop and camp there. Holly marks the place where the mountaineers' bodies were found and explains that some of them died in unusual ways, with fractured skulls and ribs, but no bruises on the body. Andy and JP claim they arrived here earlier than they thought, which is very strange. According to their calculations, they should have arrived around midnight. Furthermore, the GPS starts behaving strangely, and the compass points in the wrong direction. Andy and JP suggest that they should get out of this eerie place and camp somewhere else where the GPS and compass work. However, Holly emphasizes that they need to do this for the documentary and convinces them to stay in that place at least for tonight. Later that night, Holly and the cameraman check radiation levels in the area. Holly finds a snow-covered stone and decides to investigate. She scratches the surface and discovers a strange structure with a door. The door is made of metal and is locked from the outside, as if it were hiding something very important inside. Holly tries to open it, but the cameraman says it's too dangerous and they shouldn't risk it. But a young woman says that this is the reason they are there and convinces him to help her. After a few attempts, they realize they wouldn't have much success and they decide to try again the next day. However, the two keep this from their colleagues because they don't want to scare them. When they return to the campfire, we see that Denise and Andy went to the same tent, possibly because they want to play rock, paper, scissors alone. The next morning, shrills and frightening noises are heard. Everyone comes out of their tents and is terrified to see an avalanche approaching. They run for their lives, but the avalanche is overwhelming and ends up killing the audio engineer. Andy was also hit by the avalanche and ended up breaking his leg. The others bandage his leg afterward. Holly suspects that the noises they heard before caused the avalanche and that someone is intentionally trying to kill them to hide the truth. Holly reveals to the others that she and Jensen discovered a bunker the night before. The others are annoyed because they could have hidden there instead of staying outside. They decide to use the signaling gun and notice this orange hue in the sky, which reminds them of the description of how the sky was orange in the week when the Dyatlov tragedy occurred. Authorities blame the weather conditions, but in fact, the 9 Russian mountaineers asked for help using a signaling gun. After some time, they spot 2 men approaching. Andy and his friend, being more experienced, notice that they don't have backpacks with supplies, which means they weren't there by coincidence. They believe the 2 men were sent to kill them. Andy tells the others to run away. As he was severely injured, his friends had to leave him behind. Suddenly, the 2 strangers start shooting at them. Andy is hit in the head, and the rest of the group runs to the bunker for shelter. JP is hit while opening the door, but even injured, he manages to get inside, as well as Jensen and Holly. They close the door. Next, they flick the switch that turns on the light, which shows them they are in a tunnel. Now they need to find another way out. As they venture deeper, the trio finds a kind of military lab. They find files and documents related to human teleportation studies. JP, injured after being shot, cannot move, so Holly and the cameraman decided to look for an exit and come back to get him later with help. Walking through the lab, they find a flyer containing records of Russian soldiers, each marked as killed in action. Probably they were killed because they saw something they shouldn't have. They come across a metal cell with meat hooks and some blood on the floor. They also encounter a dead soldier whose tongue is missing, probably the tongue they found earlier. Suddenly, they hear a noise and go to investigate. They enter this room where they discover a camera which looks exactly the one they have, but Jensen still has his camera in hand, which he is using to film everything at this very moment. So how is that possible? Furthermore, after seeing the footage, the two realize that the same images they recorded so far are in that camera. JP starts screaming, and the two go to check what's happening. They find two eerie mutants who begin tormenting them. The mutants move swiftly like apes from one place to another. When they try to attack the mutants, the creatures vanish and reappear elsewhere. However, the mutants don't seem to intend to harm them, but rather to force them into another room. Holly and the cameraman enter the place and close the door, finding themselves in a kind of cavern. They explore further, and upon throwing a stone, Holly notices there's a portal. They find primitive drawings from ancient tribes that likely attempt to use the portal like 1,000 years ago. With no other way out, the two decide to enter the portal, because if they return to the bunker, they will encounter the mutants and they don't think that's a good idea. They step into the portal, Russian soldiers appear, and we discover that the young people have returned to the year 1950, when the bodies of the 9 mountaineers were found. The woman who appears in the scene is actually the truck driver's aunt, who previously stated that the rescue team found 2 unknown bodies in addition to the 9 mountaineers from the Dyatlov group. The military brought the 2 bodies found to the military lab. They stripped both of them and hanged them on hooks. Finally, there's confirmation that they are Holly and the cameraman, because the creatures has the same tattoo as Holly, which is a wing. Everything indicates that the Russians discovered this time portal and wanted to use it as a weapon during the Cold War. They sent several people through the portal and found that individuals turned into mutants after crossing, which explains why the characters found frightening human skeletons before. Eventually, the Russians terminated the experiments and concealed that portal from the world until Holly and the cameraman discovered it. This explains why 2 men, possibly from the army, were sent to kill any visitors who approached the time portal. But here comes the most interesting and shocking part. Holly and the cameraman's lives are connected to a temporal cycle created by the mysterious portal. The dream Holly mentioned and the cameraman's previous trip to the forest are actually unconscious memories. The barefoot footprints found near the camp were left by the mutants, who are capable of teleporting. When they reached the lab, Holly and the cameraman were being pursued by none other than themselves, or a mutant version of themselves. This cycle will continue ad infinitum. This helps us understand why the mutants didn't intend to kill them, but only to force them into the portal to continue the cycle. Well folks, that was the video. See you next time and goodbye.